Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're ready to start because I see that we're live on Facebook. Are you there, Gary?
Yes, I'm here.
I want to welcome everyone to the inaugural webinar for the Cincinnati Bar Association. I am Tabitha Hochscheid, the chair of the CBA's Health and Wellbeing Committee. And for those not familiar, the committee's been around since 2012. So we are going into our 8th year as a committee at the Bar Association. Part of what we do with the health and well-being is we run a monthly article called Balanced Living, or now it's every other month, in the CBA report. And we also run a lecture series. And as luck would have it, today was supposed to be our lecture with B. Larson, who is a past president of the CBA and has written a book, but who's also 91 years old, and everything has been canceled in our world and we're all turned upside down. So we're doing something new and different. And today we are presenting practicing mindfulness and meditation during a crisis. And here to help or to teach us about mindfulness and meditation is Gary Powell, who's the founder of Legally Mindful, but also a critical part of our committee at the Bar Association. Good afternoon, Gary.
Good afternoon, Tabitha, and everyone.
So, how are you doing in the coronavirus challenge, or as I call it, Corona World?
Corona World, yeah. It's been challenging. I mean, I was thinking last night that this is a perfect week for me to do this presentation, this webinar, because it's been a very, very hectic week for me. I'm not only general counsel at Emery Oleochemicals, a chemical company here in Cincinnati that's been around since 1840, but I'm also now acting as the HR manager. Our HR manager left at the beginning of March, and so those duties fell on me also. So I've been knowledgeable over the years in employment law, but the day-to-day running of an HR department puts a lot more on me than what I was used to just as general counsel. So I've really had to follow my own advice this week and take time out for myself and to meditate. And that, you know, I don't know what I would have done this week without having a meditation practice to fall back on.
Don't you think all lawyers are being challenged? We're asked to do something new and different, like work from home, or in some cases, lawyers are even being laid off and don't have any idea of when this crisis is going to be over. I like to think that it's the universe's way of challenging us to modify things that we've always been entrenched in doing, because we tend to be creatures of habit. But can you just describe how working from home has challenged you? I'm assuming you're at home right now.
I am at home. I've been at home for, this is my second week now. It's been a challenge. I used to think, you know, working from home would be a great thing. But it's so easy to get out of your ritual. You know, I've worked from home on different, you know, days here, days there, and that's not been a big deal. But when you're home on a regular basis and you're not used to that, you really, in my opinion, have to establish a ritual, kind of still maintain a schedule, you know, so that you don't lose hours here and there all the time. It's easy to do that. You know, I'm here by myself, so I don't have to deal with kids or a significant other or anything like that at this time. But it's just completely different than I thought it would be. I've been rearranging my desk setup for the last 2 weeks and trying to get it the way I'm comfortable. It still has not worked right for me. I've had to move things around, and it's just been a challenge. I mean, and to be on call, I mean, it seems like when I'm working from home, I'm on all the time if I allow that. Okay, so first couple of days when I was working from home, I felt like I had to have my computer or my phone around so I could check emails, respond to people quickly. And I stopped and thought about it. I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday night. It's like, I don't do this when I'm in the office. I'm more relaxed and feeling that I'll get back to everybody within due time, but it doesn't seem to be the pressure that I put on myself when I was at home the first few days. And I think that's easy to do, because you're not leaving your office like you usually do when you're, during the normal times, where you can really have a physical separation from your job versus your personal life. Now it's all on top of you. So it's been a big change. It's been a big adjustment, but I think it's something that we all have to, kind of take into account and get used to.
I think last week I had written an article that came out in the weekly email blast from the Bar Association about some tips about working at home and how those tips I've tried to integrate into my life. For me, I have a dedicated space and a door that I shut. So I've learned that I'm a chronic person that tends to work late because I do that. Oh, I can just do one more thing and then it's 6:37. But I've tried to maintain some level of normalcy, although, doing Teams with my employee when she's at her house is kind of been a challenge.
Right.
But I would say is that we're all developing new skills through this. This is when the first time I ever used Zoom is through the CBA. And while I'm on that topic, I just want everybody to know that you can ask questions if you will type them in the question and answer field on Zoom, which is at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. Feel free to ask questions. Gary and I are going to talk a little bit about meditation. He has some specific information for us, but we would like for this to be as interactive as possible so that we know what other people are experiencing and what's going on in your daily life. I think for me, I like to get up, get ready. I always laughingly tell my husband, I'm commuting to the office because I live in a 3-level condo and I go all the way down to the bottom floor. I work all morning and then I text him and say, hey, are you ready for lunch? And we meet in the dining room and have lunch. And then he goes back and works and I go back and work and then we have dinner. And then now we try to work in some exercise by getting a walk in the evening at the end of the day. So it's funny that we fell into this pattern without even realizing it. I think part of it was that my husband years ago worked at home. So he has that experience. And it works well for us in part because I like music when I work, but I'm not necessarily a person that's going to have a lot of like television or whatever. And he's fine with a lot more noise than I am. So I would agree that finding a setup that works for you, my desk at home is as chaotic as my desk at work, which is, if anybody of you've ever been in my office, you know that I do know what's here. I'm just not necessarily neat about it. So at any rate, there are a lot of challenges. I was actually in a courtroom this morning, and that was interesting because my husband last night was like, oh, you need to keep 6 feet between all of you, and all of us trying to, stay away from one another. And so that was interesting. And I had to do client interviews yesterday by phone. All of these things are new to all of us. So my question for Gary is, why does meditation help you?
Well, let's talk. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, I put together a couple of different ideas behind mindfulness because I think, to me, meditation is kind of a component of mindfulness. I'll talk a little bit about my views of it, but John Kabat-Zinn, who's kind of the founder of the mindfulness-based stress reduction program back in the 70s, the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. And the American Psychological Association talks about it being a state, not a trait. In other words, it's something you can promote within yourself. It's something you can develop and kind of hone. And meditation is an aspect that helps improve your mindfulness. So mindfulness to me is just paying attention typically to the outside world while you're living in it, and just allowing things to happen, and getting to the point where you know that you can't control everything and you don't worry about the things you can't control. Okay, you plan for situations that might come up, but you don't start what I call catastrophizing, looking to see the worst in every possible occurrence that could affect you, because worrying is taking it a step beyond planning. Worrying gets you out of your normal common sense type of approach to the world, and brings up all kinds of disastrous kind of potential happenings. So our mind is very good at going back in the past to recall, memories that still burden us, or of looking into the future to find out ways that we can worry about things that will probably never happen. So mindfulness is bringing it back to the present state, and the now, as people talk about. So you're paying attention to the present moment on purpose. And to me, mindfulness is so much about awareness. It's just being aware of the present moment, what you're doing in the present moment, and enjoying what you're doing. I mean, if you're eating, being mindful of the taste of food, things like that. So to me, the more you practice mindfulness, the more you're able to gain a perspective on what's really happening in your life, to deal with what you can control, but not to worry about the things that you can't control. Like I said, there's still a need to plan, but not to obsess over worrying about the worst that could happen, because 99% of the times the worst doesn't happen.
Well, we are all in a kind of a worst case scenario now. So what I would say, and what I like to tell people is, your brain is like Velcro to negative things and Teflon to positive things, right? So your brain has a built-in negativity. We're going to think critically of everything. And as lawyers, we're trained to be critical and to be pessimistic. And that in and of itself is a challenge for us. But there are some of us who are really struggling with the idea that they're not going to make money, or their practice is going to close, and they're going to, change the kind of way that we do bankruptcy or collection or foreclosures, or in your case, regulation of your business. I think in terms of being mindful, we have to acknowledge that those things are bothering us.
Oh, absolutely.
But know that we're doing everything that we can in order to make ourselves healthy and to handle ourselves every day doing our best. And that's
Right.
all we can do in a crisis. And this is a crisis. Thankfully, we're not all doctors, right? I always laughingly say, if I could have done better math, I might have been a doctor, right? But it is a challenge for all of us, and we are all considered essential. In 25 years of practice, and I'm sure you can attest to this, I've never seen the rules of court suspended or statutorily told statute of limitations. So every day brings a new challenge. And I think learning about mindfulness helps give people skills that they can use to keep themselves centered in their life and centered in the moment that they're in.
Right. And I think that's right. I mean, there's a difference between what I'd say, being aware of a situation and surrendering to it. So if you have worries about the fact that you might not be able to, continue working at the same pace you were working before because the clients just aren't there, for example, the more productive thing obviously is to do something about it. See what you can do about it. Read how you might be able to market yourself better. Talk to other people about maybe some referrals back and forth, maybe somebody that doesn't do the same kind of work that you do. But by doing something constructive as opposed to worrying is one way to bring down your stress levels. Obviously we're here to talk about, meditation being one component of mindfulness that brings down your stress levels. But there are so many different reasons to meditate that, I always ask people, or tell people, I don't understand in this day and age with so much research about the benefits of meditation, why everybody's not doing it. And so I think you're right. Before, I think you said something about how we need to kind of capture the opportunity that this crisis brings to us. We're now, required by the different states to stay at home. This gives you an opportunity, and maybe takes away some of the excuses that people use to avoid meditation. It takes too much time. Well, now you should be spending some time working on yourself, in my opinion, because if you've got a family at home, there's going to be cabin fever. There's going to be conflict between the different family members, and you have to deal with that effectively. And if you're fully bound up with stress and you don't have a good way to release that, then there's going to be a lot of blowups within that family, and that's obviously not good for anybody's sake. And so the main thing I see with meditation generally is that meditation first and foremost releases stress, helps you to release stress. And stress is a key indicator in so many different diseases. Stress releases, chronic stress releases different stress-related hormones in your body, cortisol and adrenaline. The buildup of those hormones is bad for your system. It can lead to heart attack and stroke. It can lead to increased blood pressure. It can lead to inflammation that is at the heart of many diseases itself. So if you can allow yourself to release the stress, that really brings up a different set of components within your body that actually set out different kind of chemicals that are beneficial to you, that helps your body to recover better. One of the things that we'll talk about today is the impact of stress on your immune system, and maybe some ways that I've promoting that can help deal with increasing your immune response to different diseases, that include things like coronavirus that deals with inflation in your respiratory system. So there's a lot of different uses of meditation, and a lot of different benefits. And it used to be that meditation was thought of as something that you just quiet your mind, and you experience the bliss of being quiet in your mind. And to me, there's so much more ability for people to use meditation in a more active way than just the passive way like that. And we'll talk about that as we go through here.
There are all kinds of meditation. There's loving kindness meditation. The Buddhists in Tibet do Tonglen, which is a meditation that's basically based on you sending compassion to other people who are experiencing the same thing as you. And studies show that meditation is good for your brain. But I want to ask you a personal question.
Sure.
When did you start meditating, and why?
Well, I started meditating originally back in about 2004. It seemed like an interesting thing to do. I've always been a curious person, and it was just brought up as a potential thing that would be enjoyable. I tried just to quiet my mind, sitting there or laying still and letting thoughts go, just the normal process, following my breath. I didn't feel I was getting enough out of it to justify spending the time. I mean, it's the typical excuse a lot of people have. People are afraid that it takes too long to get into it, to do it right, too long to get a benefit out of it. And so it was very spotty. So I would say probably a couple handfuls of times over the period from 2004 to 2008. In 2008, my sister was in the final stages of breast cancer. And I was, trying to figure out some of these bigger questions in life. She finally passed away on April 20th of 2008. And I had found out about this place, the Monroe Institute down in Virginia, that had sound assisted meditation. They had meditation exercises where you listen to them, and there was a sound pattern, sound technology behind the meditation exercises that helped your brain get into the meditative state more quickly. And so I went down there for a week, and within the first couple of exercises, I was having some very impactful experiences. I mean, I wanted to go down there to kind of figure out some of the reason, you know, some of the issues of life and death and my place in the world, more of a spiritual kind of approach. I had some great experiences down there, and I've gone back every year for the last 12 years now. But the one thing that I found out while I was on my kind of spiritual quest is that when you're in a deep meditative state that you can get into very easily with the sound-assisted meditation exercises, that you have a very clear brain. You know, the whole focus of meditation to me is that you go inside yourself. You're not paying attention to anything outside yourself. You know, you're not bothered by the traditional five senses of sight and, you know, sound and things like that. You're inside of yourself. And so the meditations that I put together for Legally Mindful all start with kind of a venture inward, a body scan where you kind of pay attention to your body as opposed to the external world. And then after you do that, you get into a very deeply relaxed state where you can do things other than just enjoy that purely relaxed state. I mean, that's a great state to be in just in and of itself. But I found over the years that I can actually take work-related issues into the meditative state and ask questions. You know, it's a state, if you've never been in a deep meditative state, I urge you to try it because it's really cool and you have a very clear mind in it. And so you're able to ask questions. I take issues about, you know, if I have an oral argument coming up, I, you know, take that into my, what I call creative space exercise. This morning, after I got up, getting ready for this webinar, I used the meeting room exercise to get into a deeply relaxed state and then to visualize how this presentation was going to go. And if the presentation goes like it did in the meeting room exercise, I think we'll have fun today. But, you know, but it's, my approach is a lot more active, but bringing it all back to the stress relief, I think, you know, any kind of practice of meditation where you're able to quiet your body and mind and allow yourself just to be in that present moment, you know, where you're not focused on everything outside, you're just kind of within yourself and you're paying attention to what's going on within you at that present moment, I think is a great way to relieve stress.
Do you think in our current environment that it helps with focus? Because I find myself easily distracted, mainly because the stuff I have here in my office to work on are things that aren't necessarily my favorite thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So we find ourselves catching up on work that maybe we've put aside, and we still don't love the stuff that we have to do to catch up. So do you find that specific exercises in your program are good for focus, or is it just the general part of meditating that helps you with focus?
Well, there's 7 base exercises. One of them, which is free on the Legally Mindful app, is a concentration exercise that has, it's just got very nice, relaxing music as the exercise. And then behind that are the sound waves that help get your brain into a more relaxed but focused state. So in other words, if I'm listening, I just listen to it while I work. I mean, that's not where you get into a meditation kind of posture where you're sitting or laying down, but you listen to it while you're working and it brings your brain into a more focused state. And so if I'm reading a tough contract or I'm writing something like a brief or other kind of court paper or a contract, I listen to the concentration exercise and it really does help you relax but be focused. And the great thing about that kind of exercise is that it not only helps you at the present moment, but because your brain has the ability to change and to have neurons fire in different ways, the more you use it in certain ways, your brain remembers that relaxed but focused state. So it's easier to get back there in the future, even if you're not listening to the exercise. Now, I've been using that kind of approach for a number of years, but I always, when I'm in a really pressed state where I need to get something done quickly or I need to really concentrate on something, I just put on my earbuds and listen to the concentration exercise because it does help with focus, and the sound patterns behind it are meant to foster learning, retention, things like that. So I think you're more productive when you're doing it that way. So I'd recommend to try it, Tabitha.
Well, I will try it, but I think it's the idea. Rick Hanson, who's an author that's written several books, but the first books I ever read was called Buddha's Brain. And it's the neurological ideas behind meditation. His famous quote is, neurons that fire together wire together.
Absolutely.
So the more you do something, the more your brain is going to be accustomed to doing it, and the more often you'll be able to get to where you're going. So that's what you're talking about. But it also goes to the idea that you need to have a lot of positive experiences to offset that one negative experience. So you get
right.
5 positives to 1 negative, right?
Yeah, you're right. But one of my other exercises is a heart-based gratitude and compassion exercise that is based on the Tibetan loving kindness exercise that I use when I'm kind of out of sorts or off center, or I've had a difficult confrontation or discussion with someone. And so that really gets you into, you send out gratitude to yourself, to other people, you express compassion for yourself, for other people. And a really good challenge is, after you've had a difficult discussion with somebody, is then to be able to express compassion to that person. Because that's really, to me, is a very important point. And I think that's one of the most important parts of Legally Mindful for lawyers, because we do have a lot of confrontation in our profession. And to be able to go into an exercise like that, be able to express gratitude, first of all, but then be able to express compassion to that person who you may not like at all, that really tests you as a person. And I think compassion, the expression of compassion and gratitude have been shown by science to increase happiness and increase perspective, allows you to look at things from a different perspective. And I think that's very important for a lawyer.
I have a question that has come over on our question and answer page. The person wants to know, where in your home do you meditate? And related to that, do you have a set place that you go that is your like meditation corner? I know that traditionally what I've seen is people are advising you to set aside a certain place in your home and have a meditation pillow or whatever else. Is that necessary? And do you do that?
First, it's not necessary. I think a lot of people are very much aided by ritual. So if they're helped by, sitting on a particular pillow or sitting in a particular place all the time, that's great. I sit down wherever I am at the time and where I feel comfortable. I've got a couch in my basement and a kind of a family room down there. I've got a chair up on my main floor. I sometimes will listen to meditation before I go to bed, because I had enough experience that I know that when my mind's racing after working late into the evening, or if I've been on social media, God forbid, or paying attention to the news about the virus, my brain is too active. So I listen to a meditation. I've got a 12-minute short relaxation exercise on the app that I listen to before I go to bed. And that really brings, the sound waves help slow your brain waves down. I had a meeting, oh God, it's been a few months ago now, but I had a meeting with a sales director in our office, in our company. I think it was at 9:30, and we were supposed to talk with the customer at 10 o'clock. And I had already had a very strenuous 2 hours before that. And so we got done with the pre-conference at about 9:45. I said, I'm going to go up to my office for a few minutes. I'll be back at 10 o'clock. So I went upstairs, closed my door, turned off my lights in my office, and listened to the short concentration exercise in my office. 12 minutes later, I was centered with myself. I was feeling very good about going back into the phone call with the client then. And again, that's something that just through awareness, through the mindfulness kind of process, that I'm aware of how my body's feeling and how my brain is feeling. And so if I'm overly stressed and I have the time, I can set aside 12 minutes to listen to that short relaxation exercise. It's a really nice experience.
So how do you feel like, because I did the exercise that you sent me on on your immune system, which I'll ask you about later. But
okay.
I was doing that yesterday, and what I noticed is that the music helped me regulate my breath. So I want you to describe to people what exactly the music does and why it helps you get to that deeper state.
Okay, let me go kind of flip ahead here. I could say it's all about the brainwaves because it is.
See, I
And
bounced around, right?
yeah, and so here's kind of the setup of your brain, the different brain frequencies that you have, and so when you're during your normal day-to-day things, you're in beta, okay? And I don't want to get too much into this. If you really want to read about brainwaves, you can read a couple of blogs I wrote on legallymindful.com about how I've understood brainwaves, and I've been able to participate in a couple of research workshops where I've meditated 2 different weeks being attached to EEGs. So I was able to see how my mind works in meditation, listening to the sound assisted meditation exercises that we use in Legally Mindful. But it is really about the brain waves. And when you're very active and you're alert, you're in the beta brain waves, which, is great. I mean, you want to be alert, you want to concentrate. But when you get stressed, your mind kind of starts going all over the place, and you're in the high beta range, and your brain is just completely disconnected from itself, if you will. It's very scattered. But with meditation, you bring yourself down, and the sound assisted meditation exercises are meant to help synchronize the 2 hemispheres of your brain. And so by doing that, you get out of that anxious level under the high beta situation. You bring yourself down to the lower beta and the alpha, where there's that relaxation part of it. And so I think it is all about the brainwaves, and it's important to know about that, because I find that if I'm very stressful, like yesterday, I was very stressed out because I had to go from one thing to another. Our company, with the governor's press conference yesterday afternoon, extending the stay-at-home order, I had to, react to that for our companies, from our company standpoint. And so I was just all over the place. And so after we had our twice weekly task force meeting to deal with the COVID-19 situation, I sat down for about 10 minutes and just allowed myself to relax. And it made all the difference. I was able to function for another several hours yesterday without any problems. So it all comes down to the brainwaves, in my opinion, and understanding and being aware of how your body feels and how your brain feels at any particular time. So with the exercise you talked about, the idea is to sit down in a nice relaxed space. I sit down in my office or my basement and just plug in your headphones and listen to the exercise. If I'm working and I listen to concentration exercise, I can do that anywhere, obviously.
Okay, I think a tip that I use, especially if I'm in a situation where I can't stop and do an exercise, but just a tip that I find useful is I try to pause and take 3 breaths. The other kind of breathing you can do is like alternating nostril breathing, which is a yoga type breathing. But I take a deep breath in and hold it, and then exhale longer than I inhaled.
Right.
And that is supposed to reset your brain to a certain degree. And it's very, very useful, especially if you find yourself in a confrontational setting, or if you're in court and you're trying to present an argument and your brain's a little scattered, or you're trying not to allow the emotion of the situation to get the better of you, which we've all been there and done that. So I find that I learned to do that because of meditation, but it's one of those mindful things that I kind of integrate into my life and my practice, is that I actually will pause before I say something and go, is that really what I want to say? And am I going to say it in a way that's going to accelerate it? Because a lot of what we do as lawyers is try to get under the other guy's skin. I mean, let's be honest, it's an adversarial situation, and the other person isn't necessarily, even if you like them, isn't necessarily going to be kind to you,
Right.
if you are kind to them.
Yeah, I mean,
My philosophy is you show the opponent a certain matter of respect and give them the opportunity to give you that back.
right. I agree 100%. I mean, I'm not the kind of attorney that is worried about trying to beat somebody with a psychological game. You know, I'm confident enough in my skills and my ability that I can still be nice to people and beat them in the courtroom, for instance, or in the briefing or the oral argument or whatever. And I think, frankly, meditation has helped me kind of center myself when I'm having a difficult discussion with someone. And I think the research backs it up that when you're not stressed, you're able to consciously bring yourself down. And the breathing technique that you talked about, it's hard to do the nostril thing, you know,
Court,
if you're
right?
in a meeting or in
Right.
court. But you know, the one thing I like about using the sound assisted meditation is that it helps you get into a really relaxed state. And when you're in that relaxed state, you should kind of pay attention to how that feels, because again, that then sets kind of that trigger in your brain. Okay, this is how this deep relaxed state feels. So when you're in a tougher situation, I just take one breath and I just know that I'm going to be relaxed from that, because I've kind of taught my body and my brain that when I do that conscious breath, and it just brings me down to center, it slows my brain down, I think, a little bit, and I'm just more attentive to what's going on as opposed to reactive to what's going on. So I listen better, and I think I respond more effectively. I don't have to be a jerk when I respond. I don't think anybody has to, but I think the ability to step back and to listen to what the other party's saying and not be formulating your attack, you know, while the other person's talking, but listening to them and then being able to respond in a thoughtful, hopefully, manner and from a more balanced place, where you're actually, I think, doing better for your client that way than when you're just all reactive and you're fighting all the time.
So it's kind of fair to say that breath, when you're in the middle of a situation, can bring you back to the center, so that you're centered in the moment and it's a proactive way to handle the situation instead of being a reactive way.
Well, here's a note I put on the top of my computer screen. It says slow, because sometimes when I talk about meditation and legally mindful, it's my passion. So I have a tendency sometimes to talk too quickly. So it says slow, but it also says breathe. So that's just, and I put that on the top of my notes when I have an oral argument. Sometimes put them on the top of my notes when I'm in a meeting, because it just reminds me to be conscious of my breath. Because when you're not conscious of your breath and you're getting stressed, you have a shallower breath. And so you're really inhibiting yourself by having that shallower breath. So if you consciously pay attention to that and you breathe deeper, it really helps bring in your parasympathetic nervous system and gets out of the sympathetic nervous system that's producing all that cortisol and adrenaline. And it leads to dissipating those stress hormones. And it just leads to being more centered in my experience.
So switching gears, you've talked about legally mindful in a generic, in some specific ways, but let's just backtrack for a little bit and tell people how you went about developing it and why it's so targeted to lawyers.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I went down to the Monroe Institute in 2008, kind of on a spiritual quest. But then in 2011, I really got to talking with the director of the Monroe Institute, who was an attorney from Spain. And we talked a lot about how we could use, how lawyers needed this kind of stuff. And so at that point, I was thinking about, okay, how can I get this out to lawyers who may not be as interested in the spiritual pursuits as I was at the time, but to use it on a more practical level. So I probably started this whole concept of legally mindful back in the 2011 time period. And it's taken me a while to get to where we are right now with having an app out and the website and all, and started to really talk about it. But I did understand, and I adapted some of the concepts that I learned at the Monroe Institute to bring into the present day. as far as from a practical standpoint. Yeah, I'm sure having an interesting meditation exercise where you're, asking questions and getting answers about yourself is very cool. And I'd recommend everybody, if you can go down to the Neuro Institute for a week, do that, because you'll come back with a different approach to life, I think. But when you realize that you can really use that deep meditative state in a very practical kind of way too, that's should be very helpful to all attorneys, and frankly to anybody. So I marketed Legally Mindful to attorneys because I am one. I've been in a practice for 25 years. I was on my own for a few years. I started working at Emory back in 2008 on contract basis and went in full time in 2011. And I really wanted to bring people's awareness, attorneys especially, but any executive or professional or anybody could use this for work-related purposes, where you go into that deep meditative state and find that creative solution to something. You just kind of, see what comes up, and you follow a particular thought. If it's leading to an interesting way, something that resonates with you, you keep following it and kind of allow that thought to kind of expand. If you don't think that thought was any good, you just let it go and let another one come into your brain. But it's a really neat process, and one I use all the time to come up with what I think are creative solutions to complex problems.
So start in the beginning. You have a couple of free exercises on the app. Can you just describe what those do for people?
Yeah,
and how they help a new person, like a new person trying to learn to meditate?
Yeah, the first free exercise we've already talked about is concentration, which I think anybody can use when they need to have a relaxed but focused state, when they're reading, when they're writing, things like that. The other one is just the introduction to Legally Mindful that gives people experience to listening to a guided meditation, one that has sound waves in the back of it that leads you into a relaxed state. So that's kind of just the primer, if you will, for the other exercises that are part of the subscription. Now, as you mentioned earlier, Holly and I just put together an exercise that is going to be put out for free to everybody who wants to use it, which is I think very appropriate for this day and age, where you work on, you get into a very relaxed state, but then you allow your mind and your body to work together to increase your immune response. I'm a big believer in kind of the mind-body connection, and I think there's more and more science that's backing that up. And so you concentrate on, I don't want to say concentrate because that makes it seem like there's effort put into it, but you should just allow your body and your mind to work together to increase your immune response. It's focused on heart energy, which I am a big proponent of, and you envision yourself spreading that heart energy out to your body, and especially protecting those areas of your body that might be prone to a virus or bacteria or something else entering your body. And you work on boosting your immune response. And so what this exercise will do, even if you don't believe in the mind-body connection, it's an opportunity for everybody to get some experience listening to a guided meditation, which I think are a good way for people to get started. Because when I started, I just started listening, or I started just trying to pay attention to my breath and have some benefit from that. With a guided meditation, I felt that I didn't have to worry about doing it wrong, because all I had to do was follow the guidance, and I knew that the sound waves would be there to support me. So if something distracted me, I had an itch or something, I could tend to that and then get back into the meditation without having to start all over. So when you're in the meditation exercise, you'll automatically, and you go through a body scan where you kind of just survey how your body's feeling. And the idea behind getting into the body like that is to get your mind and your awareness off of the day-to-day world and bring it inside. And so once you're in your body like that, you can then focus on your heart energy and spreading that out. And then there's a couple of places where you have 3 or 4 minute time frame where you just kind of are there. You're instructed to, continue spreading out this heart energy and helping your immune system and things like that. But and I can envision people using that. I mean, you can spread it out. You can do all kinds of things because it's your experience that I'm trying to get people to have. I mean, some people I could see thinking, okay, I'm going to spread out my heart energy. I'm going to envision myself sitting in a bathtub and having my heart energy fill up the bathtub so I can soak my whole body in it. Or somebody in a swimming pool where they're just filling up their swimming. So it's a lot about how you want to use it, how you want to direct that exercise to be something you can resonate with. So if you want to put yourself in a swimming pool and fill that swimming pool up with heart energy and just soak in it and dive and swim in it and stuff like that, do what you want with it, because it's all about your experience and what you can get out of that. But at the very least, it will give you some experience with a sound assisted meditation exercise, and it will give you, I think, a very relaxed state where you're releasing your stress and anxiety. So if it's nothing else than just getting in and releasing your stress and anxiety, I'd like everybody, to try it. I mean, it's not going to hurt you. It's 16, 17 minutes long, and I think it's very relaxing.
And you're going to put that link out on your website, right?
We'll put it out wherever we can get people to find it. We're going to put it out on our Legally Mindful YouTube channel. I think that we'll try to put it out there. I'll put it on Facebook. We've got Legally Mindful Facebook page, Legally Mindful Twitter account. I'll put it on my Legally Mindful and my own personal LinkedIn page. But the idea is just to get out there. Anybody can send it to friends or send it wherever.
So I feel like you're demystifying meditation for a lot of us, because you're saying there are no rules, that you don't really have to have a dedicated space. That you need to do it when you need to do it, not necessarily every morning. I think it's nice to have something that you kind of get into a pattern of doing. And maybe a pattern is a good way to start. Mm-hmm. But what you've done, and which I think is really fascinating, is that you've managed to integrate it into not just your personal life, but your work life.
Yeah, and I think I spend more time in my work life than I do my personal life, unfortunately, too often. And so, I think it's important to take those benefits of meditation into your whole life. I think you just become a better person. I think I become a better person because of my mindfulness and meditation practice. I think there are some ideas that, the last page of the, didn't mean to do it, so just tells you how to use a sound assisted meditation practice and exercise. But I try to tell people to go in with an intention, so it's at least you kind of have your mind at the beginning of the exercise thinking, okay, I'm going to work on my immune response today. Or if you're going into the meeting room exercise, I'm going to visualize how my webinar is going to go today. Or the creative space exercise, I want to experience, or I want to deal with this particular work issue. Maybe, how do I write this better? How do I communicate with this other person? And I think that just allows you then to use these exercises any way you want beyond that. I mean, I wrote the, say the creative space and the meeting room exercise. Those are two very powerful exercises. The sound waves behind them have a lot of gamma waves in them, which are very much leading to a coherent brain state, to a peak brain performance kind of state, and to kind of a flow state. So you get into a really creative kind of mode there. And, you can use it for work. If you want to ask questions, why am I here? What kind of information do I need today to help me best perform as a human or something like that? You can use it for any kind of reason you want. The meeting room exercise, you can bring other people into it if you want to imagine that you're having a meeting with an adversary, to, meet up with your, parent that you may not be able to see because they live across the country or something. You can adapt them for your own purpose. But yeah, they're very flexible, and hopefully people will find that utility in those exercises.
So you get out of it what you put into it to a degree.
Yeah, just like anything else.
You put thoughts into it about a meeting that you're having, or you put thoughts into it about a project that you're working on that you're not able to focus on. Those things become clearer to
They
you?
should,
Or,
yeah. I mean, everybody's going to have their own experience, but you get out of something what you put into it. I'm not alleging that meditation or legally mindful is a miracle cure to everything that's out there. But what I'm saying is these are tools that you can use to get into a deeper meditative state more quickly, in my experience, than traditional meditation practices, because those sound waves help keep you in, to get you into the state and then keep you into that state or come back to that state. And then once you're in that state, your awareness of the outside world is gone. I mean, it's a state we typically call like mind awake, body asleep, because you're not, unless I'm asking you to do a body scan or something like that, you're probably not paying that much attention to your physical body.
so let's talk about the gigantic elephant that's in all of our lives. Do you think that dealing with COVID on a personal level, if that has meditation changed the way that you would have normally dealt with this, or just given you tools that help you deal with it?
I think kind of both. I mean, I think that my overall practice of meditation has helped me to be able to step back from an issue and look at it from a more realistic perspective. I know that we can't be afraid of COVID. In other words, we have to deal with it. As my role now as acting HR manager, I have to help others at the company figure out ways to deal with it. I mean, we're collaborating, like I said, on a two time a week task force where we talk about the different changes in the laws and regulations, how we can better protect our employees and provide them with, cleaning supplies, things like that, to allow our plant to stay open, because we're considered an essential business. So I think from a practical standpoint, that has helped me. But also I think from a personal standpoint, where I'm just more relaxed, I'm able to go back to relaxed state when there is a lot of stuff going on. And I think it's possible for anybody. I'm nothing special. I mean, I feel very fortunate and grateful that I found the sound assisted meditation approach back in 2008. And it's worked for me very well. I think it can work for anybody. And I think once you get used to being in that relaxed but focused state, you're able to carry that into your waking life. And to me, that's really the whole purpose behind meditation, is to improve your waking life, in addition to, kind of your inner life, your inner world, if you will.
So what do you do when you are, I'm assuming as the acting HR person, you may have had this happen, but when you have an employee or somebody in your life, a family member, a child, a husband, whatever, that has an extreme amount of anxiety about this. And I'm not talking just, oh my God, I have to wash my hands all the time. I'm talking about, I can't leave my house. I am completely consumed with the news every day. There are people who are having this type of extreme stress, or like I call it, or a low level anxiety almost disorder from this. What do you tell people that have that reaction?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't, tell people from a psychological kind of clinician kind of perspective what to do. I think meditation helps when you're able to kind of take your focus off of things, but also I wouldn't hesitate to seek professional help. Emory, we have an employee assistance program that's part of our healthcare insurance, that employees can call that on, whenever they need it, whenever they need somebody to talk to about a psychological matter. And I really hope that we move forward in destigmatizing mental health issues. I know that our committee, the Health and Wellbeing Committee, is doing that. The American Bar Association and pretty much probably every bar association is working on that, because our profession is a high stress profession. And there's a lot of alcoholism, a lot of substance abuse issues, and a lot of mental health issues. And, for too long in our profession, people had to hide all those things and not seek treatment when they needed it. And so even in a family situation, there's a time that things like meditation may be helpful, but I surely wouldn't recommend that to replace seeing a medical doctor, a mental health professional, or to replace washing your hands and keeping social distancing during the COVID-19 situation. And I think you can all work those things together. But as far as practical things, if somebody in your family is very anxious about the COVID situation, I think first of all, taking them away from the news would be a good thing. I mean, everybody needs to stay on top of this to a certain level, but by diving into it every day and becoming infatuated with, knowing everything about the virus and everything about what's happening in the United States or the world about it, I think is unsettling, is not good for your mental health. I think reading a book, going outside, especially in areas where, it's spring now in Cincinnati, walking through a green area, through a park while maintaining social distances is very good. But to distract the person from over anxiety, catastrophizing, if you will, about the coronavirus, I think is big. But like I said, don't hesitate to call a mental health professional if you think that your loved one or child or whatever is too deep into the COVID situation.
I feel like personally, we've all had our freak out moment. My freak out moment was early in the first week and a half because I have an employee that I wanted to make sure still got paid. And I was waiting for clients to pay their bills and all of this back stuff that being your own boss it comes with being your own boss. But I think there's this anticipatory grief that we all feel because every day we turn on the media and we hear we're going to have tens of thousands of people die or 100,000 people die, and then you start seeing people that are either famous or somebody you may even know, or you may know someone who gets sick from it. So I feel like meditation is one of those tools. I also feel like other contemplative activities can help, whether it's anything from knitting to gardening to writing a journal to giving yourself something that is calming and relaxing to you, a craft perhaps.
Yeah, I think anything creative,
Right.
cooking or, drawing something or, just writing, maybe you'll become a great author, write some short stories, see what happens. But no, I think, I'm not a big fan of television watching. I used to watch it
I'm not either.
when sports were on, but I don't turn it on a whole lot nowadays. I like to read. I like to read real books, but if I don't have access to real books, I'll read on my iPad or whatever. But I think just distracting yourself, and I do agree, meditation, everybody needs to have some escape from their day-to-day life at this time, because you're crowded in a house, maybe you're not able to get out and see people that you're normally able to see. And I think you need to take care of yourself first and foremost, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be as good as you could be in dealing with others, including people in your family. So I think meditation is a good way. I was going to say escape, but meditation is not really an escape, but it's a channel that you use to kind of get in touch with yourself and allow yourself to release that stress. And I think overall to have a better day, a better week. That's, so the more you do it, I think the more benefit you'll see from it.
I feel like you've given us all really good information and a really new tool to help us get through the next couple of months. I mean, we've been told a stay-at-home order is good for another month, and that possibly it's going to be a slow integration back into life. So I would just like to say thank you on behalf of the Bar Association, because we're right at an hour, and ask if anybody else has any questions. They can type them and get them to us. And I would just like you to give us some of your thoughts in closing.
Well, you know, I've been drawn to this and trying to, you know, I've had a couple of very impactful meditation exercises over the years where it's been made clear to me that I'm a teacher, you know, that I need to teach. I taught at the University of Cincinnati as an adjunct for 26 years, absolutely loved it, where I could, you know, I guess, communicate my love of learning to others. And I think I'm still in that role. And so hopefully I'll be able to get the word out further. You know, as far as the immune response exercise, we'll try to get a link out to everybody that's been participating in this webinar today. And we'll also work with the Bar Association and everybody else to make the exercise available to anybody that wants to listen to it.
Well, thank you again for all your time and your efforts.
My pleasure.